But let's move on then to our next speaker who'll be addressing the topic of reframing the objective to generate measurable value from data analytics-led initiatives. We're very honored to have Mr. Karl Dinkelmann, co-founder and CEO of Nexus Data, to engage us on this topic. Karl has nearly 20 years of experience in data analytics and business strategy. He leads a team of renowned data experts who help organizations unlock value from their data. Karl's strategic leadership and innovative approach have made him a sought-after consultant for some of the world's biggest brands, where his work has led to his team's nomination for the Microsoft Data and Analytics Partner of the Year award. Karl's expertise spans mining, media, entertainment, fleet management, and financial services. He has a proven track record of driving substantial business value through strategic data initiatives. He is also a co-author of Accelerate Your Data Confidently, or rather Your Data Value Confidently, and he shares insights in that book on leveraging data for transformative growth. Please help me welcome Karl Dinkelmann.
All right, let's check that works. That's great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's really great to be here with you from George. We are for 2 days in Cape Town, and always exciting to visit Sanlam and to get engaged with our customers and with the data community at large. I think I want to start with a question, just to establish in my mind, who am I talking to? So I want to ask if you can please raise your hand and just listen to me carefully before you do. If you have data in any way as your core job right now. All right, great. And I want you to raise your hand if you don't have data as your core job right now. All right, just very few. Okay. So that means I'm going to be talking to the data audience largely, but I'm going to touch on some of the business leadership aspects as well as we go through. And a lot of what I say is going to be focused on more of the business value of data rather than digging into deeper data issues. So thank you for the introduction shared earlier. I just wanted to mention a few more things about us before I get stuck into it, just to give you a bit of context of where we come from, what are we doing and why we're here today. And some of the things I just want to mention is that some of our customers have been, we actually have Sanlam as a customer as well, with Abida and the team. And we've worked with some of the biggest brands in the world on some of the issues that we address. We also partner with some of the biggest technology businesses. We share partnerships with some of the biggest industry leaders as well. And from a business point of view, like Howard and his team, Jordan Morrow, from a data literacy point of view, etc. And we really focus on this issue that generating measurable value from data analytics or through insights is not an easy task, as I'm sure we're all well aware, right? So generating actionable insights is one thing, but actually having it land in the business and generate real value is a completely different story. And so we work with our clients to plan for and address those complexities so that when you start with an initiative, that you have assurance that you're actually going to generate value. The reason why we do this is because I myself have faced that challenge for many years, that uncertainty that comes with kicking off an engagement and not having the certainty that this thing's actually going to generate some value. And then the concern that comes with that is, am I going to lose momentum in the process? And we want to make sure that we're creating a cycle, a flow of value creation, and we need to be able to see success to do that. So what I'm going to leave you with in this session is a sense of confidence that when you go about an initiative, that you're going to have a little bit more drive towards the measurable value side. So I'm going to share with you some practical tips and a couple of frameworks that you can use that's going to help you to really drive value and question yourself when I'm doing something, is it to drive value, or am I really focusing on just generating insights, and where does the gap between that lie? And I'm going to show you some insights around how this creates a positive cycle of value creation in the business, which is really where you want to be. Listening to Rishi this morning about doubling the number of ML and insights initiatives, and then going to 200x in 2026, that's going to require a cycle, a flow of value of investment and value creation, so that business leaders feel confident to invest, and data leaders or data professionals are generating that value, right? If you don't have that flow or that cycle, you're never going to achieve that objective. Let's face it, right? And so I'm going to help with some of that flow. So at the end of the session, I'm also going to give you an opportunity to get engaged with us. We have a book coming out in January 2025 next year, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to join the waiting list for the book. You'll see a lot of the content that I'm presenting is very relevant to what we're going through, and so you're welcome to join the waiting list, and we'll share content with you about the launch of the book. So let's get into some of this content around reframing the objective. And the things I'm going to cover today are why do we need to reframe the objective at Sanlam today? Right, so we're going to dig a little bit deeper. Why is this important? Why is it important to focus on measurable value creation rather than on actionable insights only? I'm going to introduce you to a framework and a new role that will help you to drive this challenge and to make sure that there's a flow of value. We're going to deal with an example around a common challenge that Sanlam faces at the moment, the cross-sell challenge that was highlighted in the panel and in other discussions. And finally, we're going to look at the practical application of how do I pitch for investment in an environment where we're dealing with corporate stakeholders, right? And how do I make sure that I get the commitment that I need from the stakeholders so that we can continue with our journey and generate the value. So the first thing we're going to get deeper into is, why is reframing the objective so important for Sanlam today? So we have these lofty objectives. We want to create this value, 200x insights and ML initiatives. And we're already creating a lot of value. I'm sure everybody in this room is involved in something that's generating value. But there's certain things that we're doing that are battling to gain momentum and gain flow, right? And so with this lofty objective, we have to focus on that value creation cycle in order to create the momentum. Otherwise, we continue bumping our heads. So as a data professional, I want to ask you to ask yourself, as you're going about your business, as you're doing what you need to do, you need to ask yourself this question: is the initiative that I'm currently working on going to generate insights, or is it going to generate measurable value? Right? As a business leader, the few business leaders that are here, I want you to ask yourself, how can we use insights to power the initiatives that are sitting on our roadmaps? So what we're doing is we're bridging the gap between the data side and the business side, and the cornerstone of that bridge is value, right? So when we talk about business literacy or data literacy and business literacy, those terms are interchangeable and they're somewhat vague. Really, what bridges that gap in the middle there is value, right? And the best way we could describe it was through this idea of the cycle of value generation, which is what we're really looking for here is, on the one side, we have the CFO, and the CFO's driver, as we should all know now, because we have to deal with them often when we're building business cases and we're trying to get investment. The CFO's driver is really about value and risk, right? So I myself am a CA. I've never been a CFO, but I understand that world very well. And if you ask me about my business, that's really what I'm concerned about, is value and risk, right? And so if you want to talk the language of the CFO or the language of business, you need to talk the language of value and risk. And so we fail with that sometimes because we focus on the capabilities around what we do and how we can generate insights. But what we're really trying to focus on as the business is how do we create value and how do we manage risk? And so what this enables the CFO to do when he has this confidence or she has this confidence around value and risk is that they're able to invest more confidently. And in our book, what we talk about is the concept of data confidence, right? So when I tell a CFO or a business leader that you're not data literate and you need to become data literate, Howard spoke about this earlier and said that it's derogatory. They don't like hearing that. But when we talk to business leaders and we say you need to become data confident, that's a very different way of looking at it. And where data confidence really comes in is I feel confident to invest in this initiative that you're proposing to me. Now, our jobs as as data professionals is to extract the confidence out of them. Their jobs is to ready to learn about what we do as well. But there's no case where we have to bring our business leaders all the way into what we do. They shouldn't have to worry about the capabilities other than to invest confidently. Our jobs is to present it back to them, present a business case back to them where we can build their confidence around the value it can generate and that it addresses the risks that they're concerned about. That creates the confidence to invest or data confidence. The CDAO has to deliver and publish measurable results. A lot of the challenges you have in generating or bringing in investment into what you're doing is the challenge of generating actionable insights instead of measurable results. You need to generate measurable results and you have to publish those results in order to get the investment. And what happens is that the cycle will go over and over and over again. And as you build more value, you should be able to get more investment. And this is actually a lot of why Sanlam is where it is today, because you've been able to do this effectively to an extent. We just need to keep on keeping this in mind and making sure we're addressing it more and more and more as we go. Right, let's talk about the next piece, which is I want to talk about data value assurance and the data value architect. So, what does it actually take to deliver measurable value in what we do? It's not a simple feat. We need a combined approach that takes into account the complexity of embedding insights to generate value, right? So actionable insights on their own cannot generate any real value. Now, what we talk about is the difference between determinate value and indeterminate value. So when I generate an insight, so let's say I can see in my cross-sell model who are my highest propensity to buy segment of customers, the list itself of the high propensity to buy customers only contains indeterminate value. Indeterminate value is really difficult to measure. So you've given me who I need to phone. So what? Right? You've given me who I need to sell to. Does it really have value? Not really. Right? It has value that is very difficult to measure. And we don't want to be delivering indeterminate value because we don't want our CFO to be confused about the value we're generating. So what we have to do is we've got to take that through the pipe into determinate value. Determinate value is easy to measure. If I generate a list of high propensity to buy customers in my cross-sell insights, and then I embed that into the business process and into the applications that are driving the sales efforts, then I can start generating some determinate value. And I actually need to measure that value so that I can push that cycle. Now we know that the embedding is where the process normally struggles. Because as data people, we're really great at building insights. We're not really good at embedding those insights where they need to be embedded. And often what we do is we work in a dark closet, building some incredible things. But when we bring them to IT or to the business and say, can you please use this? Can you please embed it? Can you do something with it? They go, where did that come from? That wasn't on our roadmap. I can help you in 18 months' time. Right? Does this ever happen to anyone? Right? And this is where great data science and ML goes to die. How do you prevent that from happening? This guy, the data value architect. See, what you're dealing with is multiple diverging priorities. IT priorities, business priorities, and data priorities, right? And you entering a world where there is a lot of other stuff shouting a lot louder than what you are, and you don't have the authority, you don't have the mandate, right? So on the one side, you've got great insights. On the other side, you're trying to get to measurable value. In the middle is this role that needs to help you to get there. And often, as data leaders or as data professionals, we've tried to play this role ourselves. How's that going? You trying to convince the business to adopt something. You trying to convince IT to do an integration or to bring your insight into the process, right? Not often going well because we struggle with issues like we don't have a mandate. The business doesn't see this as a priority. They don't trust what we're actually going to deliver, right? And so we've got this role that we define in a very detailed way in the book in order to alleviate this issue. And this role is operating based on a framework called the Data Value Assurance Framework. So this framework's got 3 pillars: support, contract, and deliver. These are the 3 things this role needs to do in order to make sure or to assure the value of data analytics-led initiatives. So how do I align business, IT, and data? I execute according to this framework. So what I do, I ensure independence. Very important. That's why it doesn't really work if you involved as the data value architect, because they don't see you as independent. If we look at the next one, aligning strategically, you have to be able to pinpoint the exact strategic objectives that you are working in or dealing with. Otherwise, you're not going to have joy. Assign a ringleader. You need an executive level person that understands what this initiative is about and is sanctioning it and is sitting in the right forums going, we need to do this, right? That's a ringleader. They need to understand the IT, the business, and the data side and how that can create value. From what I'm hearing in this conference, you guys have a couple of good ringleaders, people that understand, business leaders that understand the value of data. You need to get a mandate issued. You have to go to your CEO, you got to sit next to him as the data value architect, and you need to say, you're going to write an email to that business leader and that IT leader, and you're going to tell them this is a priority, right? You get the mandate issued, and you need key function collaboration. How do you bring everybody together? How do you hunt as one, right? You make sure that there's collaboration between the 3 different functions. Everybody that's going to get involved knows that they're going to get involved. They have the resources. They're on the plan. They've been informed. There's collaboration. The next thing you need is this contracting stuff, which is demonstrate the value. That means I need to be able to show value early in the process. Don't take 6 months and then deliver something and everybody goes, wow. Try and get something done in 6 weeks, right? And show there is value here. I can't tell you for all the customer segments that this is going to happen, but I can tell you for this subset of the customers, this is what might happen, right? And then you get that into the process as quickly as possible. Not big bang, small iterative, right? Get a small sub-segment of the sales team focusing on cross-sell initiatives, because that is what happens, that's what builds the momentum and gets people excited about what you're doing, right? Confirm value attribution means that everybody needs their share of what you're doing. Everybody needs to be acknowledged for what they're doing in the collaborative process. Why is this important? Because if you can't pinpoint who added what value, business leaders cannot invest effectively. If we don't understand that data created this value in the process, IT created this value, and the business function created that piece of the value, then we're never going to be able to say, okay, where do we invest more in order to create more value? I need to enforce accountability. So that means I need people to know that this is what they need to do, and that's what they're responsible for. That's what they're going to deliver to the process. And that's across the value stream. And then we need to recognize value. We need to set the objective to recognize value. From the beginning, I say, my objective here is not to deliver insights. My objective here is to deliver value, right? And so you set that objective. Then finally, on the deliver side, we have to engage with stakeholders. So we've got to make sure that we actually actively, as the data value architect and the different teams, we're constantly engaging with the different people, making sure that do you understand what's going on? Are you happy with this? Do you understand the impact of what this insight is going to do in your team? Are you training your people? Are you making sure the process is getting adjusted? We're engaging with the stakeholders. We're managing the change. Engaging the stakeholders is part of managing the change, getting people ready for what's coming. Analyzing broadly. You don't just look at the problem from a data point of view. You look at the problem from an overall business point of view. How is this going to impact what we're doing? You architect for value. So you don't just do your architecture based on the data issue or the insights issue. You do the architecture based on everything that this is going to change in the business. Sounds like a responsibility for an enterprise architect. Well, that's what you need to start working with, is get your enterprise architects involved, get your business process architects involved, get your IT architects involved, because what you deliver, the insights you deliver, cannot realize value without those people involved. So you've got to architect with them in mind and consult them early in the process so that you're working together to deliver the value. And then you've got to factor in dependencies. What does that mean? If one step in the process fails or one thing is delayed, it cascades and it can delay the whole initiative substantially. So we need to factor those dependencies in and make sure everybody knows we're managing the delivery closely and we're making sure that we're all aligned and we're doing what we need to do when we need to do it. Right? Sounds like a job for a good project manager or a good program manager. Right? Whip everybody into shape. And then finally, we've got to evaluate, realign, and reprioritize, because we've got to keep on iterating and making sure that we're improving what we're doing and we're learning from our mistakes in the initiative. I want to quickly look through this framework with you that addresses a common challenge. It's called the IFMAPI framework, and it's for recognizing value in data analytics initiatives or data analytics-led initiatives. So it stands for IFMAPI because it's in identify, forecast, measure, attribute, publish, and improve value. And what this does is it brings the focus of what you're doing to recognizing value. So everything that I need to be doing needs to be recognizing value. So what I do when I identify value, I look for contextualized value. So what does that mean? I know that this is in line with what the company wants to do. It's in our strategy, right? And then I identify VGIs, which is value generating initiatives. So let's say that's your cross-sell initiative. And then I do a once-off demand consolidation exercise. I go around into the business and I understand what are our different opportunities here for cross-sell, for maybe some churn analysis, maybe some product mix analysis, things like that. On the forecast value side, if you don't understand, or if you're not focused on determinate value, it's going to be really difficult to forecast the value. Right, so one of your gatekeepers for generating determinate value is forecast the value before you start. Force yourself to sit down and say, how much value can this generate? And don't start unless there's a big ROI. Otherwise, you're not going to get the support you need, right? Saving someone's time, building a manual report, because you're automating their report, is not a good ROI. If you're saving someone 40 hours a month, because you automated a report that they have to do manually in Excel. Don't get involved in that stuff. That's an operational issue, right? Get the business to appoint somebody that can take care of those sorts of reporting exercises. But when you're doing determinate value stuff, you need to hit the income statement hard with extra revenue or a massive saved cost, right? That's where we need to be focused. Measure value. So I attach what I'm doing to OKRs and KPIs because that's how the business looks at value. Attribute value. We said earlier, I think it was Rishi that said, one of our biggest issues in Sanlam is cost. Do you know why one of your biggest issues in Sanlam is cost? Because you don't attribute value properly. If you can attribute the spend in your data platform, which is where most of your cost sits, it's platform and it's people, right? If you can attribute the value that you're getting from your initiatives that you're delivering, if you can say that this piece of the platform cost or these people are responsible for generating that value, cost is no longer an issue as long as the value is higher than the cost, right? It's very simple business principles. It's amazing how if we were talking about buying a property, everybody would be going, well, that's obvious. You don't even have to tell us. But because it's data, it becomes a little bit more complex. But the basic principles apply the same. We just have to bring them down to that simplified level. Your CFO really just wants to know how much value you're generating for us. He doesn't really care about spending 10 million bucks a year on your data platform. What he cares about is how much does that spend realize in value? But we get involved in these unproductive cost discussions because we don't do this stuff right. We have to present what we do in the right way in order to avoid those sorts of discussions. Then we've got published value on what we call the data income statement, which is a view of the value that you're generating that encapsulates all of the 4 areas above that. And then finally, improving value. When I have a data income statement, and it's something is actually showing us we've got these initiatives that are generating this value, and this is who was responsible for generating that value. Now I can start improving value because I can start asking difficult questions like, why did this initiative that we forecasted like this, why is it not generating the value that we expected it to? And that's how you improve and remediate, and you focus on value. The last thing I want to talk about quickly, if I may, 5 more minutes or so, is this idea of shareholder management versus investment management. Now, you have incredibly lofty objectives to go for 200x, not 200 initiatives, 200x initiatives, right? I think I saw an X there. So I want to talk on this final point about how do you get business to invest, right? You're not going to have to get them to invest 200 in 200 initiatives. You're going to have to get them to invest in 200 times the initiatives, right? How do you do that? You think about them like this. Sanlam is a big corporate, right? There's no doubt about it. 200 billion a year. I don't even know how many people. It's a monstrous ship of an organization, Titanic, right? Your stakeholders, and excuse me for saying stakeholders, I know it's just before lunch, so don't think about steak. But your stakeholders think like institutional investors. Right? So what we say is that when stakeholders think like institutional investors in large corporate organizations, they think like the custodians of assets for shareholders. Now, compare that to a mindset that a startup founder might have. Right? I'm a startup founder myself. We think very differently to how your stakeholders think. Your stakeholders are much more interested in preserving value. As a startup founder, I'm much more interested in taking risk. Could you imagine that? Right? We take what little we have as startup founders and we try and turn it into major growth. Whereas institutional investors or custodians of assets or typical large corporate stakeholders, they're very risk averse. They just want to see this, just let's tick it over, guys. 12% a year is great. 15% a year is awesome, right? Let's just get that share price going up and up and up. Everybody's happy. There's not too much risk. We can do this, right? But data doesn't work like that. Data is not a set, fixed concept. It's still very new. It still requires a lot of trying and failing. It still requires iteration, right? And so if we approach our institutional stakeholders, our corporate mindset, very risk-averse stakeholders, if you approach them with that sort of mindset, you're going to struggle to get them to invest. You have to approach them as if you were pitching to a startup founder. Because what you're doing by nature is more risky than anything else the business is doing. Because it has a high risk of failure. Gartner said in 2018, 2019 in a report that 4 out of 5 data analytics initiatives fail. I don't know what the rate is like at Sanlam, but I can assume it's somewhere in the 50% and below mark where you're getting success, right? So there's a high risk of failure. You cannot address your business leaders as if they were institutional investors. And business leaders, the few that are sitting here, you need to start thinking like a startup founder when it comes to investing in data analytics-led initiatives. You can't think with risk, too much risk. Now, the reality is you're still dealing with that mindset. So what do? you make sure that your pitch addresses the core issues. What are the core issues? Value. Make sure that when you present, don't talk about capabilities. Your CFO doesn't care about how it's going to get done. Your CFO cares about how much it's going to generate. The only reason they care about how much or how it's going to get done is because that's where the cost comes in, right? So you've got to make sure that you're pitching with really high ROI, really highly supported. So you've got to test things and make sure that they actually work before you go into the pitch, right? Don't come with too many assumptions. And then from a risk point of view, you've got to think through the risks. And you've got to pitch in a way that gives comfort to this institutional investor, that you're trying to get to think like a startup founder. It's a bit of a difficult journey, but you've got to work together to get to that point where you can see eye to eye. So, what does that mean? That means that when we're addressing the issue of cross-sell, for example, a lot of what I've spoken about can help you to address that issue. So if you're struggling with a cross-sell initiative in the business right now, start applying these concepts. Start small, segment. Make sure you're treating your investors or your stakeholders like startup founders that are willing to take a little bit of risk. Talk about that. Say, hey guys, if we don't risk something here, we're not going to see returns. There's huge value. Yeah, let me prove it to you. Let me do it iteratively. And all of a sudden, you see that momentum starting to come through. I didn't mean to mention the competition, sorry. All right, final thing is, get your phones out if you want to. You can scan that QR code, join the waiting list. A lot of what I spoke about here, actually everything I spoke about here is in the book and a hell of a lot more. So sign up for the list. We're going to share some content and we're going to share some early access for the book that launches in January. And we look forward to engaging with you as an audience for the book and for some of the work that we're doing in events and in our content. And the last thing is, there's my contact details. If you want to take a photo of that, you want to get engaged, you want to talk about some of the challenges you're sitting with, what initiatives should we be focusing on, how do we iterate, how do we treat our investors, how do we deal with some of these challenges around creating that value-generating flow, that cycle of a healthy relationship between business and data leaders so that we can achieve our lofty objectives at Sanlam. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Karl. Let's see if the room got any warmer and there are any questions that we have. I don't know if we've got any questions online. No questions online, so let's have a look. The microphone is zooming around over there. Can I grab a microphone and bring one closer to the front of the room, if you don't mind? I do see a hand up on this side. Okay, it's on its way to you.
That talk, I wasn't here this morning, but the 200 times, right? So do you find when you're doing data, it's quite difficult when companies come up with massive goals that are based around a shorter cycle of showing value because of the shareholders, the CEOs move on quicker these days than they used to. So the longer term goals are almost shelved and they have these massive targets. How do you bridge that? Now you come in, let's say you're a vendor or you're a supplier, and you come in now, you want to change it. So someone has already made that statement 200 times. How do you know? You know that is a huge.
Yeah.
But you're still talking to the same management that is risk averse.
Yeah.
Like you say, or in that preservation of shareholders' funds.
Yeah.
How do you bridge? How do you show the incremental and keep them on track for the next? That's my question.
That's a great question. There's some challenging aspects to that, right? Because what we found is that the average C-level, non-data CXO, their tenure is 5 years, around about that level. The average data leader is around 2 years, and even less in some studies, right? So you have this problem where data leaders are coming in, and we believe it's caused by a lack of generating measurable value, right? So you lose momentum every time you change leaders. And I saw one yesterday again, somebody that I know that's a CDO, changing roles again, exactly on the 2-year mark, so proving the statistic, right? But to get to your question, yesterday I was with a client, they're a smaller business, and they struggle with the idea of changing the approach, right? So we spoke about something interesting. We said, they're in the retail sector and in distribution, wholesale. We said, would you consider that optimizing your pricing or starting to mess with your pricing? So instead of having a price list you publish once a year, think about putting dynamic pricing in place and optimizing your margins by lifting up your price to the point where it doesn't affect demand too much and you end up getting more margin overall, even though you might be selling less quantity, for example, right? The response was, that's not going to happen in our business, right? And I thought, well, we either as business leaders going to adapt to the changes that are happening around us, or the changes are going to start happening to us, right, without our control. And so, yes, 200x is a really lofty objective, but if you get involved or you go and visit an organization like Google or Spotify, one of the ones that are really succeeding with data, you'll find that that's the norm. This is what they're doing. But the key that we're sitting with, and we write about this in the book through an interview that we did with somebody that worked, Brett Sinclair. I don't know who of you know Brett Sinclair. He worked for Google for 5 years as a product manager. And he said that in Google, every business leader is data confident. Every business leader has got this idea of what they can do. If you're sitting in finance, you know this is what I can do to generate value. If you're sitting in sales, if you're sitting in marketing, every business leader thinks like that. In fact, what he said to me is, if you're not data confident when you enter that organization as a business leader, you won't survive for more than 2 weeks. Because you're sitting in meeting after meeting after meeting where that's all that's driving the business, right? And so the requirement in Sanlam is, if we're going to reach those objectives, it's not just the data function or the data cohort that's responsible. The business leadership has to start growing up in terms of their data confidence. But I'm not talking about data literacy. I'm talking about the confidence to invest, the confidence to take risk, right? Now, that is partly the responsibility of the data cohort, because we've got to create the processes that help with that confidence to invest. So it's a dual responsibility. I don't think the objective is unachievable for an organization like Sanlam, as long as you get these sort of things right.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? We've got a hand up on this side. Can I grab that microphone? Thank you. Oh, there we go one. Hey, two. I'll grab that anyway. Thank you.
You know you're keeping us from lunch, right?
I know, it's your fault. You said steak. But go for it. Thank you.
So you mentioned before that the tenure for data leaders is 5 years. How do you combat the momentum that keeps getting slowed down because a new data leader comes through?
Yeah.
And how would you combat it if, say, you present your idea to one data leader, they love it, they implement it, and then a new data leader comes in and maybe they don't love it?
Yeah. So the tenure is 2 years, not 5 years. So average data leadership tenure is 2 years. So what is the problem? Why do data leaders leave so quickly? Because business leaders can't tolerate a value loss, right? If your sales director is not performing, they're going to move on, right? So it's a simple issue of value creation. And the data world is notoriously bad at generating value. Data leaders that generate value will stay forever. That's why you have organizations that have grown up and grown up and grown up into incredible organizations, hitting the $1 trillion market cap club, because they've got data leaders that understand how to generate value and how to report on that value and how to take credit for that value. So that their C-levels, their CFO is going, how can we put in more? How can we invest more? Right? And so how do you fix that problem? How do you fix these challenges of quick turnovers, of somebody having some strategy coming in, doing something, and then leaving, and then you have to figure out how you're going to generate value, because that's going to build up the data confidence in your leadership in a way that they're willing to stick out the journey because there's something that they're getting back for it. I don't blame any CFO that lets a data leader, that starts pushing a data leader out that isn't generating value, because that's normal business.
Ooh, one more question. It's not my fault now about lunch.
I think we can keep you here for another. I think we can keep you here for another 20 minutes. We've got time. So I don't want to be one of those data leaders nearing my 2 years. So maybe I should start thinking about what next. Notwithstanding, so you spoke about this concept of embedded.
You speak into the mic.
You spoke about that context of embedded analytics.
Yes.
And it ties in with the earlier discussion in the week as well of advanced analytics being number one in an embedded way. So where have you seen that working? I mean, there's obvious examples like said Google and Amazon. They know how to use data. So how do we state that value? I mean, I think maybe that's where the challenge is. How do we showcase? I just looking for a couple of examples.
Look, I'm a simple guy, right? I like really simple examples. I'm not a machine learning engineer and tell you all about the statistical models. I can tell you how CFO looks at this issue, right? So let's talk about it like this. Let's say you were the first to arrive on the scene at a business that just needed some analytics. Okay? But let's say it's a simple business like a retail and distribution business that buys stock and sells it. What we like doing as data analysts is we like coming in and trying to automate things that don't really need to be automated yet. Okay, we like installing Power BI and we want to get a subscription and then we want to show our cool fancy dashboards and we won't use pie charts, Howard, right? But we'll do all sorts of fancy things and we'll make sure that we take care of pipelines that bring the data in from Syspro or wherever it is, and then we'll push it out into the dashboards and we can do all these really fancy cool things, but that doesn't matter. Let's go back a step. What is the actual issue? The actual issue is we want to see some value. So let's say you started out just with a simple exercise like, I just want to understand which customers are dropping off from last month. So which customers bought at this level from me last month for this product, and now they're dropping off. Why do I want to know that? Because I can take action against that, right? I can talk to somebody about this, right? Do I need Power BI to do that? No. Do I need to automate it? No. You see, what we like doing is we like sticking into the realm where we're comfortable, which is we want to work on writing code and doing automation and things like that, where the business often doesn't even need you to do that. Pull out Excel, get a list of last month's sales, compare it to this month's sales, and start looking at that in comparison. But don't stop there. Take it the next level, take it the next step, and start digging into how we can fix it. And this is where the embedding comes in, because now what I'm doing is I'm starting to get in the sales director's face and I'm saying, listen, do you know that this is happening? Do you know that these are the reasons why? And do you know that these are the things we can potentially do to fix it? All of a sudden, you've got the business's attention. And it didn't even take that much effort. It just changes, it forces, or it requires you to change your mindset about what your role is. Your role is to generate value. Your role is not to focus on building only pipelines and automation. The automation comes in when the business adopts that into their process and says, you know what? That thing that you do in Excel that's so awesome, it's generated so much value, can you please automate that so that our people can start getting access to that information on a regular basis? We don't like getting our hands dirty into the process, and start digging and understanding what's actually going on in the business. You have to create value.
Okay, so I think maybe you are answering my question. Maybe it's that mandate that you spoke about earlier. If you don't have, or maybe it was Howard, you spoke about the data value architect having that mandate, because when you say I must be in the sales director's face, it's one thing for me to generate that report for him, but I suppose the mindset has been, when I've handed it over, that's the end of my role. He's supposed to do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the challenge that a lot of us face, right? Yeah. So in the absence of a data value architect, you need to carry that through. You need to get involved. You need to make sure that that value is being realized. But over time, as your environment matures, which a lot of you are sitting in really mature environments, right? Then you need to start looking at, can we have a dedicated role that makes sure that that happens without us having to drive it, right? But not having that role is not an excuse. You are still responsible to make sure that value is realized from what you're doing.
Fabulous. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Are we taking one more?
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, we'll take it.
Yeah, Karl, I'd just like to confirm what you're saying. Now, if we also go into approach of, are we willing to constantly look at the performance and the value that the product generates. Keep that circle going, because you may do well this year and next year it's not delivering any value. Are you willing to discontinue the product like business would if they weren't making profit out of the product? Don't let that loop go. You need to keep checking on it.
Cool.
Fabulous. All right.
Thank
Ladies
you.
and gents, can we give Karl one more round of applause and just say thank you so much?
Thank you.